abducting Earth's citizens? Are we, as some experts claim, simply guinea pigs for some intergalactic science project? Is there any way to know which of us may be the next target of an alien abduction? You may find the answers profoundly disturbing, even frightening, as we explore the most famous abduction stories ever recorded in the UFO Diaries.
Even to the countless thousands who now believe in extraterrestrial life, the reports of alien abductions may still seem incredible. If these stories are true, then our concept of the place our world holds in the universe may have to be radically reappraised. For most of us, that possibility may be too awesome to contemplate.
Stories of creatures from outer space that violate our communities, our homes, even our very bodies, are brushed aside by most people as the stuff that comic books are made of.
And yet, new abduction reports continue to be made, as they have ever since a dark night in 1961.
The first abduction story to ever get any national publicity was the case of Barney and Betty Hill. They were driving home from a vacation trip through the mountains of New Hampshire in September of 1961 when they saw this strange light in the sky that seemed to follow them, and it approached them quite closely.
Betty Hill still vividly remembers exactly what happened.
Barney decides to get out with the binoculars in an attempt to identify this craft.
And he saw some, what looked like a being on board who was looking at him through the window, and he became quite frightened, began to flee. They drove quickly away, and then this object seemed to come down close over the car. They heard a beeping sound. They turned off the main road, seemingly under the control of some unusual force. As they got there, a roadblock of several unusual-looking individuals stopped them, and they got out of the car and followed these strange beings into this space. Well, you can only describe it as a spaceship.
According to the Hills, while they were on board, they received a strange physical examination. Betty Hill tells us what happened.
They checked our eyes, ears, nose, throat, took samples of our hair, scraping of our skin.
And were then released. What seemed like a moment later, they heard a second set of beeping sounds, and they seemed to lose all memory of what had happened during the time between the two sets of beeps. And they just sort of drove on home, knowing that they'd seen a UFO, but not thinking anything else of it.
The story the Hills told of their experience seems too bizarre to be believed. Is there any tangible proof of their UFO encounter? After the Hills reported the incident to local authorities, Air Force astronomer Walter Webb was assigned to investigate their story.
According to Walter Webb and other researchers who have since investigated the case, Mrs. Hill had no special knowledge of astronomy.
Only a remarkable memory.
And while Betty was aboard the ship, she was conscious enough to look around and ask questions. And she saw what appeared to be a star map on the wall on the inside of this ship. And she asked who apparently was the leader of the group what it represented. And he says, well, it's our sector of the universe. Well, Betty remembered that, apparently. It was imprinted in her subconscious. And Betty was able to draw a sketch of what she had seen on that star map inside the ship. No one really knew just what it meant, except that a brilliant young woman by the name of Marjorie Fish looked at it and said, I think I can make some sense out of that. And over the course of about 6 years, Marjorie Fish put together what she thought that map that Betty remembered represented. But on that map were a couple of star systems that were not discovered until the late 60s. Once we made those additional discoveries, the fish map became very valid. The place that the captain of the ship told Betty that they were from was a star system that we call Zeta Reticuli.
If the drawing she made turned out to be an accurate representation of the arrangement of certain stars, it could constitute proof that the story of her abduction was true. But does this prove that she was shown this by a space traveler from another world?
Betty and Barney didn't make it up, because over the years since, that's a tiny part of a vast amount of evidence that these are real events. The emotional involvement, the impact of this experience on both of them indicate to me that this was a real story.
Still, it was a bizarre story that didn't get much notice outside the ranks of UFO investigators. Betty and Barney Hill might well have been forgotten. But then, in 1973, newspapers and TV stations from coast to coast exploded with an even more fantastic story: the abduction of Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker. Like Betty and Barney, Charlie and Calvin were just two average citizens doing average things.
They were fishing in Pascagoula, Mississippi on October 11th, 1973, when they heard a noise. They described hazy blue lights that quickly became visible as a dish-shaped object. They said three beings that appeared to be robots floated out of the craft toward them.
According to both Hickson and Parker, they were then taken inside the UFO. Later, Charlie and Calvin both told terrifying stories of samples of various kinds being drawn, cut, and scraped from different parts of their bodies. Then, abruptly, they were released.
Soon the Hickson-Parker abduction was something everybody was talking about. They were national news.
The Charlie Hickson-Calvin Parker abduction got worldwide attention and reminded researchers of Betty and Barney Hill's story a decade earlier. A search for real proof was now underway. But does it exist? Is there such a thing as hard evidence? Some have told stories of physical implants. Can these be detected? And what of the psychological impact on abductees? The surprising and often terrifying answers when UFO Diaries returns.
Many people claim that while the stories of alleged UFO abductees may sound convincing, there is in fact no real scientific evidence to prove or disprove it. But are there abduction stories for which reliable proof does exist?
Bud Hopkins has devoted his entire adult life to working with the trauma of UFO abductees and investigating their stories.
I've worked with over 500 people in the past 20 years, and of that 500, most of those people I've looked into multiple abductions. There are many physical marks that turn up after an abduction experience. A person can describe a physical process taking place on something being done to their thigh, and you check the place and there's a scoop mark or a long straight cut.
Dr. David Jacobs is a professor at Temple University and an author of several books on UFO abductions. He believes that the physical evidence is very real.
This includes actual scars, that is to say, scar tissue has formed, which of course is physiologically not possible in just a few-hour period, but that is what we do see.
Scars can be obtained in any number of ways. But what of the strange phenomenon of actual physical implants? Could this be the hard proof researchers are seeking?
I would say probably the majority of abductees have some sort of an implant in them. They describe an instrument that's placed high up their nose. They can hear a kind of crunching sound, feel a crunching sound as this instrument goes up through the cartilage, and it deposits a little sort of ball-like thing way up by their optic nerve or their pituitary gland. This happens in their ears as well.
And I could feel my ear being pulled as far from the skull as it could, and an instrument being intruded into my ear.
People wake up in the morning, there's blood all over the pillow from their nose or from their ear.
A little girl woke up, 9-year-old. His whole family are having these experiences. She was visiting a friend. She woke up in the morning with a memory of a strange face looking at her, and there was a huge long gash down her cheek and around underneath. The emergency room people took 18 stitches in it. The doctor said it was a scalpel cut, and it was of uniform depth, and it was extremely deep. And she has no memory of it. She didn't wake up from it. This is something that happened during the night, together with other memories. There is physical evidence all over the place.
Not only that, but people are physically missing from their normal environment. That is to say, they're not there. When they're in an abduction event, their parents are looking for them if they're kids, or their husband or wife doesn't know where they are. They're actually missing.
Dr. Carla Turner works with dozens of people who claim to have been abducted by UFOs.
She believes that some abductees never fully recover from the shock and terror of what happened to them.
I had no intention of becoming a UFO researcher, but the issue was forced on me by the beings who invaded my life and my home and my family, everything. There can be no doubt that something real and deeply traumatic has happened to these people. Their whole concept of reality has been shattered by bizarre and inexplicable events. They certainly can no longer laugh at the idea of flying saucers and people from outer space the way other people can.
And yet apparently, many abductees seem to lead normal lives for many years before remembering this traumatic event.
Kathy Davis, for example, remembered one of the most terrifying of all alien encounters, the loss of her unborn child.
I met Kathy Davis in 1983 when she wrote to me about these marks that turned up on the ground after an odd experience.
Hello, Mr. Hopkins. This is Kathy Davis. Can you help me? I can't sleep. I don't know what's the matter with me.
So why don't we count backwards from 10?
Okay.
10.
10. Well, it was on the ranch. There were too many things happening that didn't make sense. The tool shed door was open, and I know I closed it. But I couldn't see anything in there when I looked. And I've been weeding my garden. I was outside. There was a burn on my lawn that was a perfect circle. I couldn't explain it. And Rusty, my poor dog, Rusty. Rusty! Rusty! I'm so scared. He was under the car. He never does that. As I was standing on my porch looking around, there was light. A light over me. And they come down and they got me. Somebody got me. And I was there. I was on the table. They hurt me. They hurt me bad. My baby's gone. Did they take my baby? Where is he?
This aspect of the Kathy Davis story makes it a truly incredible account. Might there not be some other explanation to the sudden and mysterious end to Kathy Davis's pregnancy?
But we've done a lot of tests. Lots of tests, and they've all come back negative, and I'm afraid you're not pregnant.
But Kathy had been sure she was pregnant. Could she have been mistaken? Was her abduction experience simply a vivid dream?
No.
There is no doubt that the aliens are profoundly interested in human reproduction. The missing fetus aspect of the UFO abduction phenomena is far more widespread than people would like to believe. Kathy Davis's multiple encounters are not that rare either, and apparently this has happened to me too. When we finally got up enough information, we felt comfortable to talk with other family members, and it was several hours long of talking about the whole phenomenon. My former husband glanced over at his wife and he said, "I guess maybe that's what happened when you lost the baby." And I said, "I never lost a baby." And he said, "No, you've got to remember this, that in 1970, while I was on birth control pills, that I had become pregnant, and that a couple of months later I had had a very painful miscarriage. I was in a lot of pain. I was hysterical. I wouldn't let him take me to the doctor. And even after he told me this, I have no conscious memory of this occurring."
The problem with the abduction phenomenon is that it begins in infancy and goes through old age, and it does not stop from what we can tell. So everybody who's had abduction experiences oftentimes can look forward to having them again, and that's one of the really unfortunate aspects of this.
But even with vivid, reoccurring accounts of alien abduction, isn't it still possible that the supposed victim has somehow imagined the entire event?
In terms of hoaxes, outright hoaxes with abductions, I think they're very, very rare.
And if that is true, could we believe a similar story if it were verified by other witnesses?
There are good eyewitness accounts from credible individuals. There are multiple witness cases.
The most astounding tale of abduction was reportedly seen by many people. Would you believe your own eyes if you saw it?
Well, how come they're not seen over New York City? Those cases exist.
Was there a spacecraft high above a New York City street? What was the purpose of the beam of light, and who saw it happen? Details of this amazing event when UFO Diaries returns.
In our quest to learn the truth about the many accounts of alien abductions, we find that many such stories have come out only under hypnosis, and in the minds of many people, this invalidates the stories as reliable evidence. So should we then believe an abduction account that includes important portions that were remembered without hypnosis? And would it add to the credibility of the account if there were independent witnesses as well?
And in this particular case, a woman who had been abducted a number of times earlier, had been working with, remembered consciously being paralyzed, seeing a figure at the foot of the bed, and so on. When we did hypnotic regression session on it, she remembered having been floated out the window.
I came, and then what? What happened next?
It filled the room. And I didn't know what to do. I was by myself.
You saw the being, and then what?
It started coming towards me. And he was reaching out and started touching my face. And then, I don't remember much after that. There's like a white veil in front of my face. And I was all numb. My whole body, I couldn't move. It just felt like I was just hanging there. I remember all these lights. And then I remember I was in a ship. It was huge, and they took me into this room, and they put me on a table, and they started doing all these experiments and stuff on me.
And then what?
I'm not really sure.
What happened, though, which was so dramatic, was I began hearing from witnesses later on who saw this whole thing happen from stalled automobiles. They saw this craft above the building that she lived in. They saw the blue white beam of light. They were transfixed looking at it. And they saw 4 figures rolled up in a kind of fetal position come flying out the window, 12 stories off the ground, and then unroll. One alien, Linda Cortila in a nightgown, and then 2 aliens down below, and then they were all lifted up into the craft, and the craft then zoomed away. This is extraordinarily important because one car of witnesses was located at one place, another car was located up on the Brooklyn Bridge. I have 3 other witnesses at other locations in New York City, some very close, who saw aspects of this. There is absolutely no doubt that this took place.
If we now assume that UFO abductions really do happen, surely the inevitable question is why?
One of the witnesses who saw this was an extremely important political figure. And it was as if they were showing him, this is what we can do.
What purpose would it serve for aliens to come to our world and kidnap human beings, then release them again, often with their memory blocked?
It would seem that this is an attempt on the part of the UFO phenomenon to have a role in effect, or to let's say, affect world politics.
Is there any way to know who is likely to be the next abductee? Are the abductions part of some mysterious, larger mission, or just random acts?
Okay, there's no question in my mind that the abductions clearly represent an agenda the aliens have for humankind.
Are there any clues that may explain the true mission of extraterrestrials on Earth? We'll find out when UFO Diaries returns.
UFO researchers have documented hundreds of reports of UFO abductions. Are there any distinct patterns to these alleged abductions? Or do they seem to be utterly random?
Well, it seems to me the range of people who are involved in these experiences is total. It's the entire cross-section of the community.
Farmers, working people, military people, housewives, children. And this is a real zinger that a lot of people don't know about. It involves university professors, and it involves prominent politicians.
We see it as being primarily clinical. That is to say, there is a certain agenda that they are fulfilling that uses human beings. Exactly what the endpoint of that agenda is, we're not sure of.
It would be nice to think that perhaps humanity and the best parts of humanity are common to other parts of our huge creation we call the universe. Why not check in on our little brothers, so to speak? That's one theory.
But the fact is we don't see them as coming here to help us, to cure cancer, to stop war, or anything like that.
Instead of mining for gold, they mine the human body and the human energy. They take from us physical materials. We don't know what they do with them. They take from us emotional energy. We are a great resource. And it's a one-way proposition as far as I can tell. They take and give nothing back.
But yet we don't see them coming here to take us over, to do bad things to us.
Many people in this field of research believe that the aliens are taking material from us in a desperate bid to save their degenerating race. I'm not one of those who buys this.
However, this is a reproductively oriented phenomenon, and the endpoint from what we can see is the production of sort of small kind of babies that most people say don't look alien and they don't look human. They sort of look like a cross between the two. Most abductees will call them hybrids. We feel that the production of these offspring of the hybrids is one of the major purposes of the abduction phenomenon, but we don't know exactly why yet.
I would think perhaps that the fact that our species has been here as long as it has and has failed to overcome certain deep problems within mass humanity and individual humanity could be of great interest to those who have been able to overcome it. Now, that's another theory.
Genetic experiments, dying races from another world. So much of the abduction phenomenon seems to be based solely on mere speculation. And yet, to those who claim to have had the experience, all of this is very real and utterly terrifying, something that has changed their lives forever. Is humankind being used as part of some cosmic science project? Are there a multitude of alien races visiting our world, each with a different purpose for being here? Could it be someday soon they will make their presence known?
Is it possible that this is all just preparation for a future intergalactic cooperation?
Until then, the mystery of alien abductions will remain the most troubling of all the entries in the UFO Diaries.